How do you use colons and semicolons? My name is Gina. I'm an author, editor, publishing professional. I help you make your writing better. Kurt Vonnegut once said that the only reason anybody ever uses a semicolon is to prove that they went to college. And while I don't necessarily agree with that statement entirely, it does go to show that you can write an entire novel and be totally and completely grammatically correct without ever using colons or semicolons. Like literally, if you write a 200,000 word novel and never use one of these pieces of punctuation, nobody will notice. However, if you use them incorrectly, people will flag it and then you will be all kinds of annoyed about it. So if you don't want to use them, go ahead and skip them. I'm going to give you the most common ways in which they are used in fiction, and then you can go from there. The most important way that you're going to look at a semicolon is when it is joined together two independent clauses. So these are things that could be full and complete and grammatically correct sentences all on their own. I don't know what I'm going to do today. That is a full and complete sentence. It is grammatically correct all on its own. I have no plans. Also a full and complete sentence. By joining them with a semicolon rather than putting a period here, right? Like you could put a period there. By using a semicolon instead, the reader is supposed to infer that these things are sort of dependent on one another, that the writer wants you to mush these ideas together a little bit more than you would with two sentences that are normally back to back, which makes this largely a style choice, a voicing choice. You do not have to use semicolons. You could phrase these things together in a different way in order to convey that same like closeness. You could say like, I don't have any plans today, so I don't know what I'm going to do. You could do this in a different way. You don't have to use a semicolon if you don't feel comfortable doing so. There is this other like technical way that if you have a list of things that has too many commas in it, you will use semicolons to help break up that comma and make it more clear. This is a really easy, obvious one because these are really famous cities, and so even if you had commas in there, people would probably know and understand what you were saying. But if you were listing a bunch of things that had additional commas and offsets within it like this, the semicolons can become very helpful. Now, colons, if you are going to use them in fiction, you can use them to like set off a list. Like, I have a lot that I'm going to get done today. Full and complete sentence, but then you've got a bunch of incomplete partials. This is a list of things here. So we have full and complete sentence, and then impartial or incomplete phrasing, sentence, broken fragments, things like that. So in this case, it's a list. Over here, there's only one thing I need to do today: eat. This construction shows up a lot in query letters, to the point where I will sometimes have people send me query letters to edit, and there will be 5 of these where they are using this incomplete or like this fragment here and to emphasize how important that fragment is, they do the full and complete sentence colon fragment. And it really puts an emphasis on that fragment and sets it apart from everything else. And is like, dun, dun, dun. So you can see how in a query letter, if we are trying to emphasize these things that otherwise wouldn't be emphasized, it can feel very dramatic. It can also reach a point where it feels overly dramatic and you've been using it too much. If you are going to do this in a query letter, I strongly suggest deploying it once very strategically. Don't do it in every single paragraph. If you are going to quote something, this is also the way that we do it. So we introduce a long quote from another work like this, colon, and then you start with the quotes. And your style guide will tell you whether or not this quote goes on a new line, whether it's indented, whether it goes and just continues on the same line. It's going to be based on like how much space it takes up on the page, your in-house style guide, what type of book you are writing. Like there's a bunch of other factors that go into this, but that's the other time that you would see a colon. But again, here you could just use a period. There's only the one thing I need to do today that I need to do: eat. You could also say like, I need to eat. That would also have a very similar, you could break the I need to eat onto a new paragraph to emphasize it. So you could get away with writing your entire novel without ever using these pieces of punctuation and nobody will care. What people will care about is this one up here. If you are using it to join together two independent clauses, but then one of them is not independent. So if you say like, I don't know what I'm going to do today, semicolon, eat, that is incorrect, and people will flag that and people will say that you have been using that incorrectly. Ironically, if you were to just say like, I have no idea what I'm going to do today, period, eat, question mark, nobody would flag that. That would look like a style choice. It's only when you use the semicolon to try to join these two things together that people get really like, nope, they both need to be independent clauses. You don't have any wiggle room on voice there. But again, if you don't want to use them, don't worry about it. It's fine. Nobody will notice.